All right, guys, I know it's been a little bit. We have been insanely busy. So yeah, it's been a little bit since I was able to do the last sit-down session. So I know I touched on a lot of things in that video, gave a lot of information. I also glossed over a lot, didn't go into as much detail as I wanted to about certain things. So that's why I wanted to make this follow-up video to the previous sit-down. But like I said, we've been extremely busy. Aiden's had a lot of therapies. Preschool has been going on with his therapist coming to the house and everything, and Aiden continues to make progress. And we've got a lot going on in our personal lives, besides with Aiden. Work's been busy for me. We have some really exciting news. We have a baby girl on the way. We haven't been really too open about it as of now. Like, plenty of people know, our family know everything, but we haven't made like a major announcement. And I think there's several reasons for that. So right now Marie is 24 weeks pregnant. So we're over halfway there, 6 months. We kind of talked about it, and with Aiden, when we found out we were pregnant with him, we did the photo shoots, the big announcement, and it's a boy and all that stuff. And then what we went through near the end of the pregnancy, not knowing if we were ever going to be bringing him home, I think obviously that's kind of affected us. So it's not like we're trying to jinx it or we're superstitious or anything like that. It's just, we used the term when Aiden was in the NICU, cautiously optimistic. And to us, that just kind of meant that we always hope for the best, but we were prepared for bad news. So I think that's kind of what we're carrying into this pregnancy. We are doing everything we can to make sure that we don't have any issues. We're doing all the tests, all the scans. Marie's being monitored by enteral fetal medicine, regular anatomy scans. And we've had, several anatomy scans already. We have made sure brain looks good, eyes look good, hands, feet. Marie even saw her smiling on the ultrasound, so that's awesome. But that's not what this video is about. That's just a little life update from us. As far as Aiden goes, so I touched on a lot of things, some of his surgeries. So I want to talk about some of the surgeries that we went through. So when he was born, I mentioned that he was born without his right eye. They also immediately found out that he had a cleft palate, which again, a cleft palate is not a cleft lip. It was the top of his mouth opened up to his nasal passage. So that was something that we had to do in the future, or worry about in the future. As we progressed in the NICU, we were getting brain scans done. They saw all the fluid on Aiden's brain, and they were closely monitoring that to see if it was growing. And then we'd have to come up with a plan later on. After we brought him home, we had taken him back to an appointment for audiology. They had hooked up all these wires and whatnot on his head and around his ears. They tested his hearing, and he failed his hearing test. Also, when he was born, I had wanted to get him circumcised, and that was something that they pushed off. That was the last concern for him. So that was not done right away. We had so much other things to focus on. So let's see. So, and then also his G-tube. Because of his cleft palate and the bottle feeding wasn't going super well, when we were going to bring him home, they wanted us to get a G-tube. A G-tube is a little kind of tube that just is implanted on the outside of his stomach that goes directly to his stomach so he can be tube fed when necessary. So, which he does still have to this day. So his first major surgery was getting the G-tube put in. First G-tube, because he was so small, was this big old tube that, had this little piece that went into his stomach, and then had a tube that stretched across his stomach, so we actually had to get like a cinch point to hold that tube in place. So we wouldn't mess with it. And we also had gotten his ear tubes placed. He failed his hearing test because there was fluid in his ears from birth. Once the ear tubes were in place, we redid our audiology testing, and he passed with flying colors, so that was no longer a problem. As he got bigger, we later replaced the G-tube with what's called a Mickey button. It's smaller, more manageable little G-tube, and there wasn't a tube coming out of it. We could attach a tube ourselves, so it wasn't as much to deal with. And that's something that we have to replace ourselves every 3 months. So we work with a company called Pediatric Home Supply that supplies us with some medical equipment, syringes, gauze, tape, anything that we might need for Aiden's care and treatment. And that's all covered through insurance. So we get a replacement Mickey button, and every 3 months, I change that, which it's pretty simple, but it's a hard thing to do on your own child. So that's kind of weird. But with the G-tube, when we brought him home, we did still try bottle feeding. Most of his food was still tubed, but as he got older, we no longer tube feed him at all, unless he gets sick or something, really can't hold food down, which is extremely rare. He eats all of his food by mouth, and we work with a feeding therapist that comes and assists us with that, but generally we don't have any problems getting him fed at all anymore, so that's a good thing. First, I would say absolutely major surgery that he had done was, it's called a fenestration. In order to manage his seizures, we continued to take Aiden to neurology and neurosurgery and get all kinds of MRIs done and scans and to monitor that fluid in his brain. Well, the fluid was getting bigger and it was compressing on the ventricles in his brain. The ventricles are what drain the cerebral spinal fluid from his brain and kind of helps maintain that fluid in there. Well, one of his ventricles was compressed on one side and the other side was not. So the neurosurgeon kind of gave us the option that we could get either a shunt put in place or we could do a fenestration. A fenestration is a surgery that cuts a hole in the middle layer of the brain tissue that would allow the fluid to drain from one side to the other so that it was relieving pressure on one of his ventricles and then going to the other side, draining from that side and opening up the other ventricle, which there was a chance that that would not work. A shunt is a device that's implanted that helps just drain it directly from the brain down to the body, and those things are widely known for malfunctioning and having to get fixed and replaced. So we were kind of at a standstill on a decision. Like, we didn't want to get a device implanted if we didn't have to, but we also didn't want to put Aiden through 2 major neurosurgeries. So the fenestration, if it worked, would be one surgery, and that's obviously the best option. If the fenestration did not work, then we would have to do another neurosurgery where they cut into his head again and place the shunt. So we were leaning more toward the fenestration, and we went in with the neurosurgeon and we had the meeting, and Marie just directly asked him, if this was your child, what would you do? And he said the fenestration, and we trusted him, and so that's what we went with. So we took Aiden in, we had the surgery done, and have closely monitored it since, and it was a huge success. We were able to avoid getting a shunt done. Aiden recovered very, very well from it. He still has a little scar on his head and stuff, but he came out of it perfect. The healing process was fine. Once we left the bandages on for, I think, 3 or 5 days, and we actually called his nurse to come help us take the bandages off because we were terrified, and he had the iodine stain on his head from where it was done, and that was extremely hard to get off, but it looked like a rough incision, especially being on your head, but he made it through like a champ. Man, has been doing fine since. Again, we still continue to do these follow-up MRIs just to monitor the fluid, but we have had no concerns since then. Next major surgery was figuring out his cleft palate. So we went in and met with plastics and ENT and everybody, and they had a plan to repair his cleft palate. And it's kind of interesting the way they do it. The way the doctors explained to us is that they kind of cut a zigzag pattern and then they pull the muscle across from both sides and then reattach it. Well, we ran into a complication during his cleft palate repair where, because his right eye was missing, the right side of his face was slightly deformed, and before we were able to see Aiden after his surgery, the doctor or the surgeon had come in and talked to us and just explained to us that he ran into a complication, that there was actually more muscle on one side of his mouth than the other, so he had to kind of improvise and pull it further from the left instead of an even split. But he was able to make the repair. And then during that surgery, we also opted to finally knock out his circumcision, and that went fine with no issues. So we stayed in the hospital for a day or two. Aiden was recovering from that just fine. He started eating actually right away. We had concerns, that he wouldn't want to eat and we'd have to use the G-tube, the bottle feed him and everything, but we got some soft pureed food and he was able to eat right away. He had to wear these arm stents for, oh gosh, I want to say it was like 3 weeks. We thought that was going to be terrible because Aiden does not like having his arms or legs controlled or held or anything. Like, if he can't freely move and do whatever he wants to do, he gets so frustrated. But he actually didn't mind the arm stents at all. So that was easy to deal with. It really didn't seem like the cleft palate repair, the recovery from it, really seemed to bother him. What really bothered him was the recovery from the circumcision. He was obviously in pain from that. So during the recovery, after we got him home, we had one night where Aiden fell asleep in our bed on Marie's shoulder. And then the next morning I noticed that she had a big blood spot on her shoulder. So I said something to her, and then we found this little like chunk of something. I didn't know if it was a piece of tissue or muscle or coagulated blood or what it was. But I put it in a little container, we called the hospital. And luckily his doctor right away was like, well, that's very weird. You know, we're 2 weeks into the recovery process at this point, and he's still bleeding from the surgery. We took him into hematology, got his blood work done, and it found out that Aiden actually has what's called von Willebrand's disease type 1. So it's just another thing for us, you know, to add to the list of diagnoses. But luckily, it's not that bad. We kind of learned a lot about von Willebrand's during this time. Basically what it is a type of anemia, but not that extreme. It's the clotting factor in his blood that's just kind of not all there, the stickiness of everything. So if he were to get a major cut, major open wound, he's gonna have a hard time to stop bleeding. And that's kind of what the cleft palate was, yeah, sure, it was stitched together at some points, but a lot of it was kind of still an open wound and needed to recover. So he was having problems recovering from that, which is why he was still bleeding. Anything small, like a paper cut or a scratch or something like that, he's not gonna bleed out from. So that was an easy fix. He just had to take a medication called Amicar. During the rest of recovery, I think he took it for about a week, and then, you know, that fixed the problem. So, but moving forward, that's something we have to be conscious about if he has any other surgeries, which I don't believe we have anything planned for. Not really a surgery, but one of the other things I mentioned, him being born without his right eye causes some facial deformity. That was something that we addressed right away. So we got in with a local prosthetics lab, and we started getting Aiden what's called a conformer. They're little implants that go into his eye socket, and then every 6 to 8 weeks we would get a new one that was bigger. So as he grew and developed and got bigger, so did the conformer, so that his face and eye socket and everything could grow normally. So the first initial one was so tiny that it actually had to have a little nub on it that when we went to replace it, they had something to grab onto. So we kept moving up and up and up, and then he was growing so fast that these things, as soon as we would get him in there, they would almost be kind of loose. It got to the point where he could literally put his finger or rub it and it would pop out, and then he's shoving his finger in his eye socket, which not something a typical parent has to deal with. And his conformer would fall out and we'd have to find it, you know, and find it and clean it and put it back in. As that's progressed, now that he's over 3 years old, they were able to get the nub off there so it's more rounded and fits better. He's currently at the point where he's got the larger conformer, and we're probably months away from getting an actual implant for his eye that looks like an eye. That's not something we're super concerned about with getting something that looks like an eye. We're used to him, how he is, how he looks. We're fine with continuing either way. If we get one that looks like an eye or if we continue getting the little clear ones, not a major concern, just as long as we have something there to help him grow with that helps fix the deformity. Seizure management was one of the other things I want to talk about. We were told before Aiden was born that we were going to have a very hard time managing his seizures throughout his entire life. So that's always become an issue. The fenestration surgery was one type of way that we could relieve that pressure on his brain to hopefully manage some seizures. One of the other things was medication, which while we were in the NICU, we experimented with tons of different medications. Some seemed to work, some didn't. And then we had to have rescue medications, because the way that Aiden's seizures is that he'll have these little tiny annoying ones that last 5 seconds to 15 seconds. And then sometimes they break through and they're continuous. He'll show patterns of like minute-long seizures, 30 minutes off, and it goes back into minute seizures. So at that point, that's when we need to give him a rescue medication. And then if they extend beyond that to where they're continuous and they don't stop, that's when we have to give a heavier rescue medication. So for the longest time, we were in this constant battle. It seemed almost weekly, like you could time it out on Thursdays at 1 o'clock. He was gonna have severe seizures, and we would have to give him that rescue medication, the heavy one, pretty much hold him through it, and we would be helpless. We would hold him while he came out of it, and then he'd come out of it like nothing happened. He wasn't extremely tired or anything like that. So that was a constant battle for the longest time. As he's gotten older, as we progressed, we have continued changing his medications. There was one that I found that was called Epidiolex. It is essentially a cannabis oil type FDA approved medication. Our neurologist had not brought it up to us. I'm the one that brought it up. He said, okay, yeah, we can go ahead and try it. And since we have incorporated it into his medication routine, it does seem to have helped, along with the other medications that he's taking. I think we still have a long way to go, but to where we're at now, where we were giving rescue medications multiple times a week, it's very few and far between when we do now. So he does still have some episodes, but now we go weeks, and we only have to give the minor, the smaller rescue med. We don't have to give the major one. So he has been doing a lot better. I think we still have a long way to go. Another way that we manage his seizures is Aiden is on a medicinal keto diet, which I mentioned in the last video. I still don't know a whole lot of details about it. Marie has mastered it. She preps all his meals. Everything he eats is organic. She measures out the macros. He is on a 3-to-1 ratio. That's something I would better let Marie explain later on, because I don't want to say the wrong thing, acting like I know everything, because I don't. But she, again, has mastered that. She knows all about that. So that's something I would rather her explain than me. One last thing that I mentioned in the first video that I wanted to touch on now was Aiden's breathing. So when he was born, one of the other issues that he had was a recessed jaw, which caused some sleep apnea. Him being hypotonic, having low muscle tone, he could not control his tongue. I also mentioned that safe sleep was not a thing for him, where typically a baby lays in the crib on their back with nothing else in it. That was not a thing with him. Because of his hypotonia and his tongue falling back, we had to get these wedge pillows where it would position him on the side. And then he had to have a very low amount of oxygen that he received through a nasal cannula. So when we brought him home, we had this oxygen concentrator. We constantly had a nasal cannula on him that was pushing maybe like 0.3, 0.5 liters oxygen. And then also to monitor his breathing, we brought him home with a hospital grade pulse ox that was hooked up to his toe. So anytime we picked Aiden up, he was hooked to this big blue oxygen concentrator and a pulse ox. It was very difficult to move him around the house because you always had to take these two devices with you. So we got to the point where we were pulling shifts and he was sleeping downstairs constantly. So we could pick him up out of his crib and hold him, and he didn't really move too far. And we also had like portable carriers and portable oxygen tanks, so we could take him, with us to appointments, obviously, and then take him on walks around the neighborhood. But we weren't taking him around to stores and other stuff all the time. So we constantly had to have that oxygen and the pulse ox on. And the pulse ox was really just to monitor his breathing while on the oxygen, because when he had seizures, he did not destat, so it wasn't telling us if he was having a seizure or not, so it made things kind of complicated at night. Destat meaning that his oxygen or his heart rate would not drop, so there's not going to be alarm or bells and whistles like when he was having a seizure. That brought us into sleeping. The hospital wanted to do a sleep study with how his breathing, how his stats are, his heart rate and everything throughout the night without the oxygen. So they asked us to start it on a Friday up until Sunday, and then they would have somebody come out and then retrieve that data from the pulse ox. Well, so we did it and we closely monitored Aiden, and we actually did not have any issues. That was in February. We brought him home. He was born in November. We brought him home in December, and then February is when we did the sleep study at home with him off the oxygen. We didn't have any issues with his heart rate dropping, his breathing dropping off the oxygen at all. So we decided to go a few more days without the oxygen, see if that continues, and it did. As Aiden started to grow and develop, he was getting stronger. He was gaining more strength in his muscles, especially his tongue and his jaw. So he was not having that apnea issue. So we were able to take him off oxygen fairly quickly. We did still keep him on the pulse ox just as a precaution to make sure. But again, the pulse ox would not tell us if he was having a seizure. So that brought us into sleeping then and sleeping now. Aiden sleeps with us in bed because the only way for us to tell if he is having bad seizures is for us to physically feel him. I'm a little more of a hard sleeper, Marie is not, so she wakes up to everything. So if he gets to the point where he needs a rescue medication in the middle of the night, luckily we're able to catch that. And it has happened where we've been in a dead sleep and we feel him having the seizures. So we've had to use the rescue medications in the middle of the night. Again, Thankfully, that doesn't happen as often anymore, and we are getting better with it. It's not completely managed, but it is more managed now than it's ever been. So I think I've touched on about everything that I wanted to, that I kind of glossed over in the previous video. I'm sure I may have missed a thing here and there. I think I covered all the major points. Moving forward, we have continued neurosurgery appointments, to keep monitoring the fluid in his brain. We got the all clear from ENT and craniofacial with his cleft palate. It looks good. We don't look like we're having any issues. There's no further surgeries planned for that. He continues to develop and improve. We're still working on standing. He's getting way better with that. Sitting is improving a lot. Aiden has never been able to hold himself up or stay in a sitting position. I've more or less been working with Aiden in therapy with standing and trying to keep his legs straight and support himself that way. Marie is working a lot with him with sitting, and he is doing phenomenal. They're doing awesome with that. We got him last week in a sitting position for 2 whole minutes just yesterday with his physical therapist. She noted that he stayed in a sitting position for 5 minutes. So he's getting that trunk control. Recently just adjusted his gait trainer to hold him up higher and straighter, and there's less trunk support, so we're still building up a lot of that trunk support for him, which he is gaining a lot of strength, and he's doing fantastic on his own with that. Yeah, so we're gonna continue therapies. Speech therapy is something else that we're gonna be focusing a lot on. Aiden is still nonverbal, which is kind of a weird term to use with him because he's extremely verbal. He likes to scream and talk and have conversations, but they're not actual words. There are maybe 2 or 3 words that he can actually say. He understands words when we say them. If we say, "Where's Aiden? Where's your foot? Are you hungry?" It seems like he understands us. He does associate words with certain actions and stuff like that. But as far as getting him to talk, we're not sure where that's gonna lead in the future. So we are working with speech to kind of work with a ANS device, like an iPad, where he can communicate by touching certain things, using certain phrases that way to tell us what he wants and stuff. So that's gonna be interesting moving forward. And then we're, gonna prepare for the baby. So we've got 3 months to go. Not really sure what we're expecting out of that. So it's, I don't think we're as scared as we were the first time having your first kid, but now it's like we've got plenty of stuff now. We just need to figure out what else we need moving forward, including a double stroller, possibly a different vehicle. A lot to figure out with that, but we are so excited to be welcoming a baby girl into this world, to get to see Aiden become a big brother, and to just grow this family of 3 into a family of 4. And yeah, so thank you guys for sticking around and for coming along on the ride. I know this video had a lot more information, just like the last video, but hopefully I can keep these up. I hope to make a future video about all the devices and equipment that we use with Aiden through his therapies, all the like big equipment and like the little things that we've come up here and there that we found helps Aiden develop and stay motivated during his therapies to continue. So again, thank you guys. There's more to come. We'll see you.